Hi everybody, it's Chris. If you're just getting into Chinese, one of the first things you'll hear about is the four tones. And it makes sense because the tones are one of the most essential and distinctive parts of Mandarin. Once you can pronounce and recognize the four tones, the other main issue that most beginners face is how to remember the tones of a character. Because each Chinese character has a tone in Mandarin, and each word will be probably made up of two characters or more. So that makes two tones that you have to remember that go with that word. So from a memory point of view, it's a little bit similar to memorizing whether a word is masculine, feminine, or neuter in another language, except that there aren't usually many clues from the character or the nature of the word itself that will actually give you a hint about the tone. So it's essentially a memory game, and the best way to succeed in fixing the tones of Chinese words in your head is to keep reinforcing that knowledge as often and as actively as you can. So I have a strategy which I use to remember the tones in Chinese and fix them in my head. So let me break this down into a couple of different points. So first of all, you need to focus on using the right tones whenever you say anything in Mandarin, right from the very beginning. This is really important because the most effective way to learn any skill is through practice, and it's exactly the same with the tones. So it's easier to think that you can get speaking Chinese first and then learn the right tones later, or just remember words roughly without paying attention to the tones. But you'll be getting yourself into a very bad habit, and it will be much more difficult to correct your pronunciation later. So even if you have to speak more slowly or things seem to be taking longer at the beginning, it's worth trying to remember and use the correct tones from day one. That way you'll drill them into your head, and you don't need to worry if you make mistakes or forget some of them. It's completely natural. Just start off slowly and build up your speaking very, very slowly, maintaining accuracy in the tones as you do so. So number 2 is to analyze your use of tones as you're speaking Chinese. So forgetting the tones of words or characters is part of life for any Chinese learner, but don't let that completely paralyze you when you speak. Just accept that you won't be able to get things perfect and try to learn from your mistakes as much as possible. So self-analysis of the tones that you're using and trying to correct yourself is actually one of the most powerful tools that can help you to improve quickly. So here's how you can do it. If you remember a word but you can't remember the tones at all, you can try saying it in a flat voice, and the chances are that the other person will be able to guess the meaning if all else fails, and then you'll be able to make a note of it and look it up and check the tones as soon as you can get access to a dictionary or somewhere where you can look it up. If you think you can remember the tones of a word but you're not exactly sure, then try to make a note of that word or that character and look it up later and double check. So this will help to reinforce the tones. If you're confident about the tone of a word, but for some reason when you say it, it comes out wrong, which still happens to me quite a bit, then either try to correct yourself as you're speaking by saying it again, or make a mental note and try to pay more attention to that tone or that word next time. So number 3 is to always learn the tones whenever you learn a new character or word. So learning a word without knowing the tone is almost like being able to say half an English word. It's not quite accurate. So see the tones as an integral part of the vocabulary learning process and be disciplined about learning them at the same time as you learn the word, rather than just half learning the word without knowing the tone. And number 4 is, whenever you learn a word, use that as an opportunity to reinforce the tones for the characters inside that word. So I mentioned that Chinese words are usually 2 or 3 characters. And for example, 电视, television, is 2 syllables, 2 characters. You might recognize the characters individually, but you might have forgotten their tones. So for example, you might know that 电话 is phone, and you know it's pronounced 电话, but you can only remember that the second character is in the 4th tone. You could reinforce the fact that the second character is also in the 4th tone, and then use this learning a word and reinforcing the character to jog your memory. So number 5 is to focus on tones when you listen to Chinese, not just listen for words. So after you've been learning Chinese for a while, you'll start to find that you can pick out words when you're listening. But as you're doing so, this is also an opportunity to listen for the tones of those words. So let's say, for example, that you can pick out 选择, and you know that this means to choose. But you can also listen to the tones. Rather than hearing 选择, you can hear that it's a third tone followed by a second tone. And if you already knew that, it would help to reinforce it in your brain so that you don't forget it again. And if you didn't know, then it would help you to revise it or learn the tones for the first time. Obviously, not everybody speaks in a standard, clear accent, so this tip works better for when you're listening to people who speak clearly or to TV or radio or broadcasts. Number 6 is to keep double checking the tones of characters or words in a dictionary as you're using them in speech. So this works on the principle that the more times that you reinforce something or come back to it, the more it will stick into your head. If you have a smartphone, then you've got to install the app Pleco, P-L-E-C-O, as soon as possible. And this will give you a tool that you can use to check the tones of a given word. All you have to do is enter the pinyin, and you'll see the tone and the character come up as well. And you can use this to check phrases, words, or individual characters and the tones. So this is a really invaluable tool. So let's say that you're unsure of the pronunciation of 笔记本, notebook. You can just type in B-I-J-I-B-E-N into Pleco, and then you'll see the tones come up. And then you can even get it pronounced back to you. So this will help you to tighten up your tones and your knowledge of the tones of words if you do this often, and be very self-critical of when you think you don't know something. Number 7 is when you read, try to read out loud or say the pronunciation and the tones to yourself in your head. So it's easy to just scan over characters if you recognize them, but reading can also be an opportunity to reinforce the tones of the characters if you read them out loud or in your head. And if you come across a character that you've forgotten the tone for, then you can go ahead and look it up again to jog your memory. Okay, the last one, number 8, you can use colors or mnemonics to help to remember the tones of characters or words. So if you're a visual learner, this one will work very well for you. If you're able to associate the 4 tones in Mandarin with different feelings or connect them with different colors, then that might help you to fix them in your memory. If you think about the 4 tones as different colors. So pinyin already has tone marks to indicate the 4 tones. But there's no reason why you shouldn't use colors to make things clearer if you think that's helpful. Whenever I train people in Chinese pronunciation, I always use colors. I use dark blue for first tone, second tone I use orange, third tone I use dark green, fourth tone red, and neutral syllables I use silver. But you could use different colors according to how the tones feel like to you. The dictionary app Pleco also uses tone colors, and you can set them to whatever you want, which is really, really great. And remember that the tones of words in Mandarin may seem difficult to remember, but there's no reason why they should be any more difficult to remember than the genders of words in French or German or any other aspect of a language. So you might forget each tone a few times before it comes permanent. But with practice, if you pay attention, then you can definitely get that. And this has been my experience. You can continue to sharpen up and improve your use of tones if you continue to pay attention. Okay, so I hope you've managed to get some useful tips from this video, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.